Hey everybody, welcome to Phantom Astronaut. Thanks for checking out the stream. Today we are going to be doing a trailer react for Jurassic Park Rebirth Distortus Rex TV spot. I don't know what the Distortus Rex is. I don't know exactly what's going on with Jurassic Park Rebirth. I enjoyed the other Jurassic Park movies. Let's take a look and see what we can see. Right, so we have kind of like it's interesting, like a little dinosaur. It's a little bit more friendly than the film The Lost World, where in that film on the beach, in one of the opening scenes, you have these dinosaurs called Compsognathus. I'm not sure if that's what they were in the movie, but in the book they were called Compsognathus, and they attacked a girl on the beach, and that was like a horrifying thing. That was actually in the Lost World movie, taken from the Jurassic Park book, and they kind of juxtapose that scene maybe in this Jurassic Park Rebirth thing, because this is kind of a cuter dinosaur that is maybe friendly. I don't know, but it scares the girl either way. So they're trying to flip-flop this a little bit. Interesting. And I can see that they are obviously friendly or becoming friends, so that's kind of cute. Let's see how this goes disastrously wrong for everybody, because it is Jurassic Park.
I don't mean in a theme park.
July 2nd, coming up.
I mean in its natural habitat.
All right, looks like that dinosaur is scared. So this is very what the industry calls toyetic. And the original Jurassic Park was, of course, very toyetic because people would collect the dinosaur toys. They would collect different sizes of action figures, I think, in the original run of the Jurassic Park franchise. And those were branded with like a JP. The dinosaurs were actually branded. So it looked like they had like a hot iron that had stamped these dinosaurs on these action figures so that they could be distinguished, because what you end up with is a whole bunch of public domain dinosaur toys in the 90s. If you want to make sure that you're buying the Jurassic Park dinosaur toy, well, how are you going to distinguish that toy from some of the other offerings that were out at the time? Well, you have to put like a little logo on them. So part of when Michael Crichton was writing this book, the original book, Jurassic Park, with the intention of creating the film, I think the book was made with the intention of having it, produced. These elements were introduced because they were what is called toyetic, meaning that they can translate from the screen to physical objects, games, things of that nature. And of course, Steven Spielberg picked up on that and really took the franchise and turned it into one of the largest cross-promotional franchise experiences in modern cinematic history. Nothing was really quite that transformative for the industry in terms of how things were merchandised. Obviously, Spielberg was a well-known quantity by the time Jurassic Park came out in 1993. Many, many, many hits. Indiana Jones, franchise had a lot going on in terms of popularity, but it didn't really have that much in terms of merch. Star Wars was really the king of merchandising, and all of that was really tied to that IP. That's a very toyetic franchise, and Spielberg, even though his films were incredibly popular, didn't really have anything that was that toyetic. So attaching himself to Jurassic Park, really this became Spielberg's Star Wars in terms of being able to make it merchandisable. How this ties back to what we're seeing on screen here is that this very cute little dinosaur companion is obviously going to be something they're going to try to heavily, heavily, heavily market to children. Well, that's interesting. So Scarlett Johansson is in this, but what was that foot? Oh, what do we have here? This must be the Distortus Rex. I always like that thing with flares. I did a film once where we used a lot of road flares and always add something interesting to the scene. So this, I'm going to guess, this Tyrannosaurus Distortus Rex looks like it's maybe a mutated or early version of the Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus. It reminds me a little bit, again, coming back to Star Wars, the design of the Rancor from Star Wars Return of the Jedi. It's kind of cool because I know that the Jurassic World franchise has started to introduce certain themes from the books into the cinematic version. One of the things is about, hubris, genetic engineering, the whole idea that Jurassic Park is about the dinosaurs is somewhat of an invention for the screen. And if Michael Crichton was still alive, he would probably be yelling at me about this, because toward the end of his life, he went a little off the rails with some stuff and he recontextualized some of his work. But I've always found that Jurassic Park has this sort of symmetry to Westworld in the sense that Westworld was created for screen for Michael Crichton by Michael Crichton, and what you saw was a very simple premise of what would happen if the Disneyland animatronics came to life and killed people. Really, really simple plot. And then later on, a couple of years ago on HBO, we had this wonderful Westworld series that introduced all kinds of philosophical ideas into the zeitgeist. Now with Jurassic Park, the reason I say it's this mirror symmetry is because it's sort of the opposite. What you have is a very dense novel full of incredible ideas about how the dinosaurs are not truly representative of dinosaurs as they would have been because they are monsters. They are Frankensteined together and they are tuned to the expectations of what you may think a dinosaur would look like, but they are not truly dinosaurs. They can't recreate dinosaurs. And that concept really only made it to screen in the fourth movie in the franchise, Jurassic World. The idea that these were designer organisms. And I think that one of the stand ins for real world testing that we see is the idea that this all takes place on an island. It takes place in a place that we consider to be the third world. We look at it as culturally maybe some place that could be bought off. That may not be true. I mean, Costa Rica is a developed country. I've been to Costa Rica. It's a wonderful place. Many friends in Costa Rica. But I think when the thing was written in the 90s, Costa Rica was looked at not exactly in the most flattering of the Western global North kind of contextual semiotics. So when somebody says, hey, we bought this island off the coast of Costa Rica, they're kind of letting us do whatever we want. That really connects back to the idea that there are companies in the real world that do unethical testing and experimentation in places where they think that the local government can be bought off or, you know, deregulated to some degree, controlled. I remember in the early 2000s, I was doing a lot of corporate video work, and I don't really do that. I didn't do that much of it. I kind of backed away from doing that after this. One of the clients that brought us in, this company I was working for, was an investment bank firm. And I'm not going to say the name of them, but they were a Wall Street firm. And what they specialized in was biotech stocks. And in order to promote these, they wanted to create a couple of content verticals. And one of the content verticals that they did was they bought a medical journal so that they could kind of control the narrative about some of these stocks and companies and things that they were trading. Another vertical that they created was a charitable foundation. And this is where they came to me. They said, hey, let's make this great video product about this charitable organization. And this foundation, the mission statement was that it was going to be in Africa, and they were going to be using cutting edge first world medical technology to deliver cost effective medical treatments in places like Africa. Well, that sounds very altruistic. That sounds like something that is good for humanity. Well, there's another way to say that. And the way that I would phrase it is that they were taking experimental procedures and drugs that would not be cleared for human testing, and they were using African citizens as guinea pigs for it outside of the purview of institutions like the FDA. And what they were going to be doing was taking charitable donations to facilitate their own unethical R&D. And that's a real thing. That's a real thing that happened. That's something that I had come across my desk as like something for me to participate in as a content creator. Really, really dark stuff. And this was maybe like 2005. So this had really been going on before the original Jurassic Park, and it continues to go on nowadays. So with that said, you see something like this, the Distortus Rex, and it makes me think, hey, okay, maybe this is an abandoned island. Maybe this is some of the original experiments. Maybe this is something that it has a big bulbous head. Maybe it is genetically crossed with maybe like a beluga whale. Maybe it involves some kind of like cancer. As we know, cancer is not a disease. Cancer is a state in which the cells will reproduce incorrectly and continue to cause a genetic chain reaction that, makes them malignant in greater number. So maybe this is something that is in a lot of pain. Maybe that makes it angrier. I'm not sure. Let's see what we've got. Oh, that's such a cool creature design. It really is. Looks very humanoid in the skull. Maybe they were trying to do experiments on its intelligence. Really, really dark stuff. All right, and what do we have here? This is another TV spot. So this looks like the research facility, again with that great red and white lighting. It's really interesting too how, going back to Michael Crichton, these set pieces remind me very much of the Andromeda Strain. If you haven't seen the Andromeda Strain, directed by Robert Wise, Michael Crichton script, it's about a virus that comes from space, and the scientists are trying to deal with understanding it and trying to figure out how to stop it from spreading. Very, very slow paced. It's that great 1970s sci-fi stuff that I love. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. Really, really cool. But this design reminds me very much of it. The way that it's using its claw looks like there's some kind of level of intelligence there. So maybe it was some kind of like enhanced intelligence. Maybe that's why it has such a pronounced head. Maybe I said beluga whale. Maybe it's very cetacean-like intelligence.
On the island we're headed to,
They're headed out to the island, dude.
2 dozen species have survived there alone.
Theme park owners did experimental work.
Well, that certainly doesn't look like the D-Rex. That looks much more like the T-Rex. So there might be multiple dinosaurs on this island. They've got the raft there. This is kind of cool. So in the original Jurassic Park book, there was a river rafting sequence where the tyrannosaurs are chasing them, and the humans hide behind a waterfall. The Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus, the one that we know of, the iconic one, pushes its snout through the waterfall and starts sniffing for them and using its tongue to flop around and look. All of its senses engaged, and that was, I think they tried to film it, or at least they did some test footage of it for the original film. Didn't quite work out that way because the animatronics that they were using at the time, the Stan Winston, even though he was incredibly gifted, he and his engineering team, they just couldn't get it to look realistic, so they ended up scrapping it. But this is kind of cool that it also ties into the river adventure. We have that here at the Universal Studios in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a Jurassic Park ride here that is based on the boat. There we go. Seems like they're taking a lot of cues from the original Jurassic Park novel, or at least grabbing bits and pieces that were not filmable back in the times that Jurassic Park was put out. Yeah, this really, really reminds me of that sequence from the original book. Interesting. Very interesting stuff. It's kind of cool. That's those are ultrasaurs, I believe, South American dinosaurs. Some of these illustrations there was a book in the Audubon Society put out, a book that the Audubon Society put out a couple of years ago that had these gorgeous paleo illustrations and that counter shading, that zebra-like pattern that we saw a second ago was used heavily in some of the renderings. So they're looking for eggs, they're looking for genetic stuff, they're scavengers, mercenaries, who knows. Is that a Quetzalcoatlus, maybe? More South American creatures, prehistoric creatures. I'm not really going to say dinosaurs because those are pterosaurs. Pterosaurs aren't dinosaurs. They are flying reptiles. Dinosaurs are interesting because if you look back through your taxonomies of what connects to what, all modern birds are technically archosaurs, which are avian dinosaurs, which kind of branch out of the theropod dinosaur lineage, and you can trace all of that back to other connected species. I believe Suchosaurians are the ancestors of crocodilians, and again, I'm not paleontologist. This is all just kind of like from memory, so please go back and check my work. But you see that crocodiles and birds are sort of toward the closer end of the tree of life in terms of time to where we are right now. So if you trace it further and further back, there are other branches that went completely extinct, and obviously pterosaurs are one of those branches that went completely extinct, but very, very interesting animals. Okay, so we kind of saw this already in the initial trailer that was showcased as the TV spot. And there it is again, that really cool shot, July 2nd. Again, mercenaries, very Jurassic Parky stuff. These look like hybrid animals. Again, this really, really is leaning into the genetic experimentation, Frankenstein kind of thing. Frankenstein, interestingly, is considered the first science fiction story. So the whole genre of that with Mary Shelley was kind of interesting. These are definitely hybrid creatures of some sort, and they're on a boat, so I'm guessing there's going to be some. Yeah, that's the mosasaur. The mosasaur from Jurassic World is kind of ridiculous. If you've ever seen a mosasaur skeleton, we have one here at the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History. They're big. I mean, they're nowhere near that big. They're not big enough to swallow a great white shark whole. So it's kind of attacking them. That'll be a fun sequence. It's kind of cool. And what else are we going to see? Is this going to be the only thing? Kind of reminds me a little bit of that awful Jason Statham movie, The Meg. I forgot who wrote the original book, because The Meg, that series with Jason Statham, is based on books. And those books are awful. They're as poppy as Michael Crichton is. Man, you've got to see how awful these books are. I'm going to check out really quick for you Steve Alton. Steve Alton, he used to do a lot of radio spots on Coast to Coast AM as a guest. Horrible, horrible author. He had a whole, either just one novel, maybe it was a series of novels that he created based on, what's that frozen lake in Russia? Vostok? Is that the name of it? Steve Alton Lake. Let's Google this. Heaven's Lake, Vostok, maybe? Volskig? Yeah, I don't know. But there's that Russian lake that's allegedly buried under enough ice that it has prehistoric organisms that are still alive, that are thriving in their own sort of pocket ecosystem. And he wrote a book about that too. But if I go here and look up the Meg book review, there was this really, really bad review done by maybe it was the LA Times, and Steve Alton was furious over it because it's completely scientifically inaccurate. The whole thing is just hilarious. And it's interesting that that book series was inspired by Jurassic Park, the film, which now seems to be looping back around to the shot with Scarlett Johansson shooting at what is essentially a ridiculous version of a mosasaur. Anyway, thank you all for joining me. Make sure to subscribe to mentalmntl.substack.com. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe here on YouTube as well for more Midnight Mystery School, and I will see you out there.